Alrighty. So I've watched this video before, and I, want to objectively, look at this, try to get, some insight on somebody with, NPD. Um, and I just felt it might be appropriate, like, to come out and say, like, how I kind of perceive this whole situation.
Hi, if you're new to my page, I'm professionally diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, and here's an important message. Absolutely nothing on this planet entitles you to diagnose another person with any type of mental or physical disorder unless you are their doctor. I find it very sad, and it causes me to lose some faith in humanity that I have to come on here and say this, because I have literally gotten into arguments with other people who are trying to actively convince me that they're entitled to diagnose somebody with NPD or ASPD simply because they were abused by that person. No.
Okay, so, I'm very sorry that you're dealing with that. That's got to be extremely tough. I mean, I do know what, physical and all that other stuff abuse looks like. I mean, like I said, I've watched this video before. It's not necessarily that I think anybody is trying to diagnose you, because we all know that you have to be a doctor in order to diagnose somebody. But the term narcissist goes back to ancient times, like a narcissus. So it's not a medical terminology. NPD might be, but nobody, in my opinion, is trying to diagnose anybody. It's just because they've had issues with people that check, and you have to check a lot of boxes in order for somebody to think that you are a narcissist, for example. But I just wanted to look, on Google. Is calling someone a narcissist giving that person a diagnosis? No. No, calling someone a narcissist is not the same as giving them a diagnosis of NPD. NPD is a complex mental health condition that requires an objective evaluation by a mental health professional. And yes, you're right. Usually by, not just one, but usually a team of people have to come to, a consensus that somebody has, mental issues. Okay? Is it wrong for someone to refer, um, if they have been? Okay, so I'm just looking at some things here. Um, I mean, it might not be the theoretical, political, correct thing to do. Um, but the thing of it is somebody is going to be a narcissist, whether or not they, um, if somebody's like medically diagnosed as one, they're going to be one regardless of somebody coming out and calling them a narcissist or not. So I mean, it's about as politically correct as calling somebody the R word, but like there's these social constructs that you've got to remember that people are dealing with. It's not that people are trying to armchair diagnose you. It's there's just certain traits that narcissistic people have that people who have been abused by somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, or whether they have been diagnosed or not, they just have these certain traits, and just because they check one or two of them, does that make it right for any of us to call them this, that, or the other thing? No, not really. But on the other hand, the only reason why I think this is bothering this woman so much is because she has NPD, and she's going to focus on people using the narcissistic term as like a personal insult to her. Like, no disrespect, but I really don't think that this would bother you that much if you did not have this diagnosis. Like, we all know that we're not doctors. We're not trying to, diagnose you. There is a difference between the colloquial like sense of using a word and the actual sense of using a word, if that makes sense. It's no different between the usage of the word of theory. Like, there's a colloquial term of theory that people on the outside seem to have a you know understanding that this word means something that it doesn't mean. And in a scientific sense, theory is like one of the best senses of a scientific term. It's higher than a hypothesis. It's not just some dumb guess. Like yes, it would be more correct with people if they were doctors in order to be able to call somebody out by having NPD. But like I said, calling somebody out having NPD and calling somebody a narcissist because they have narcissistic traits, it's not the same thing. We don't think that we're entitled at all. Nothing justifies hurting somebody else's feelings. And like that does make me happy seeing somebody with NPD saying that that their feelings are hurt because people are acting a certain way, because it just goes to show that we all need to do better, if that makes sense.
No matter what an abuser's diagnosis is, what you went through is valid. You don't need to armchair diagnose the person as a narcissist, sociopath, or psychopath for you to feel like your abuse is valid. It's valid either way. No matter how obvious the symptoms may be to you, you are still not qualified to diagnose somebody with any type of disorder. That is something that is strictly between a client and their therapist or psychiatrist. No matter how skilled and how much you think you know about psychiatry,
Like I said, it's not about that at all. It's not about that at all. Like, like I said, the term narcissist goes back a long time. Um, I'm sorry this is bothering you so much. And like, yeah, it's not okay for anybody to go around saying, hey, this person is this way or this person is the other way. But also on the side of those people who have been abused and been put through some major hell, because these people, I mean, these people just like to hurt other people. So, I mean, yeah, people are going to be a little bit pissed off and feel like they are entitled to, like, have their say so, because they didn't have their say so the entire time they were with that narcissistic person. So, just try to keep that in mind. Like I said, I'm sorry that this is bothering you so much. Like, and I hope that you can find a way to deal with this in a constructive and meaningful way. But, I mean, I don't know.
you ultimately cannot diagnose anybody with anything. I freaking have NPD and ASPD, and even I am not qualified to diagnose other people.
And I think that's why you're so bothered with people using the narcissistic word, whether or not they know what the clinical definition of NPD is or not. And yeah, we don't sit here and try to check a bunch of boxes like we're qualified to do such. It's just in a colloquial sense, in a sense of a society, we have words that have certain definitions that mean certain things. And I'm sorry, like I can't go and change the freaking what the dictionary says. And yes, there is a difference between a medical book and a straight dictionary. But once again, calling somebody a narcissist is not giving them a diagnosis. It is it can be insulting and a hostile thing to do, and could provoke hostility. But, you know, I don't think you are willing to see it from any other perspective but your own, meaning you are being narcissistic.
with it because I'm not a doctor. And when you try to tell these people, even politely, that they're not able to diagnose somebody with anything, they get so unbelievably defensive, like you're telling them their abuse didn't happen, when that's not at all what somebody's saying.
I don't think that I'm being defensive here or pushy backy. It's just like, I'm sorry that you're dealing with this. I'm sorry that this is bothering you so goddamn much. Like, I wish there was a way for you to just, let this go, because ultimately, you can put these videos online all you want. It's not going to change human nature. And I do agree with you. This is shitty human nature to call people names. It's not PC, so to speak. I'm I'm sorry that you're dealing with this.
It doesn't matter what your abuser's diagnosis is, there are ways to heal without knowing that diagnosis. It's not central to your healing to know what your abuser's diagnosis is. I don't even know what my abusers would technically be diagnosed with. I just have my suspicions.
Okay, so I mean, I'm failing to see exactly why that is like super pertinent to the conversation of, um, once again, calling somebody a narcissist is not a giving them a medical diagnosis. We know this.
But I acknowledge that my suspicions are just suspicions and that there's no way I would be able to diagnose them with anything. There is such a big difference between suspecting that somebody or yourself has something versus saying that you do have something or somebody else does have something. Like, you should not be saying that with that degree of certainty because you are not a professional. The amount of people that I've encountered on the internet who
And so my whole pushback on this is, several years ago when I was a child, people would call, homosexuals the F word. People would call, people with Down syndrome the R word, whether or not they actually had Down syndrome or not. Okay, um, it's not a correct thing to do, but people just have a certain way of putting labels on people, and ultimately, like, it's up to you to let that go, because, like I said, none of us are out here trying to armchair diagnose you.
think that they are able to and entitled to diagnose somebody else with something.
We don't think we're entitled. You're the one that's putting the whole entitled thing on this because you are the one getting offended. It happens. It sucks when the shoe is on the other foot, doesn't it?
Thing is just insane to me. Your diagnosis doesn't mean jack diddly squat because you're not a fucking professional.
We're
And
not
even if
trying to
you are a
diagnose you.
professional, you can only diagnose somebody if they are your client. You cannot just diagnose.
You fucking Google it. I just did. Is calling someone a narcissist giving that person a diagnosis? No. Calling someone a narcissist is not the same as giving them a diagnosis of NPD. Okay? I mean, it's as simple as that.
Somebody just because you know them. Like, that's not professional and is considered unethical in the world of therapy. My wife is a psychologist, and even professionals know that they should not armchair diagnose somebody else and that they are not qualified to diagnose themselves even.
Alright, just one quick question for you. How long do you think the term narcissist has been around? The term narcissist comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus, a young man who fell in love with his own reflection in a pool. The myth explores themes of excessive self love, disdain, and callousness towards others. In the story, Narcissus became so obsessed with himself that he spent hours staring at his reflection, eventually pinning away, turning into a flower. So, you think, psychology has been along like around longer than freaking, you know, ancient Greek myths. I mean, I'm just saying that like you can Google this. I mean, it's not hard to do.
because it's unethical. So please, can we stop using narcissist, sociopath, and psychopath as an adjective to describe an abusive asshole who may.
Well, maybe if you spent the time learning what the term means instead of just coming out here like guns blazing, all pissed off at us for, saying, "Hey, you're being a narcissist." Like, it's not saying that you have a medical like thing. We're not armchair doing anything. You're the one that's putting that onto us. Like I said, you know,
Or may not have the diagnosis. Just because you think that they do doesn't mean that they do. There are a lot of disorders that look similar. Even autism can look very similar to narcissistic personality disorder.
I mean, it just seems like you're trying to jump through as many loopholes as you can to get out of, um, the whole, um, if it looks like crap, smells like crap, tastes like crap, it's probably crap type of thing. Like, I mean, we have our senses for a reason. I mean, I'm not, calling that to you, but I mean, seriously, it feels like you're just trying to jump through any loophole you can to get away with the fact that these certain terms describe you and you're displaying this, and I'm not trying to get upset over this, but that's not what anybody's doing here. We're not trying to diagnose you. All due respect, don't say that people are trying to do that, because that's not what they're doing. you know Once again, they have excessive love and disdain towards others. It's a Greek myth. That's where the term comes from.
There's also a shitload of overlap between borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, and some overlap between ASPD and BPD. Like, these disorders are in the same cluster because they share similarities, and you are not qualified to look at those little tiny differences and decide which category somebody falls into if they fall.
See, you're the one who's getting bent out of shape over this. Like, I mean, it just feels like you're trying to jump through any loophole that you can to get away from. The term narcissist comes from Greek mythology. It's not something new that people have stolen from the term narcissistic personality disorder. This word existed before there was clinical psychologists that came up with this term. That's where they got the term narcissist from. I recommend it, you know, you should read the book called The 48 Laws of Power. It basically outlines how people gaslight and manipulate other people for their own self good. This book could be used for, people with dark intentions to, hurt other people with, but it's a good tool for us who aren't, diagnosed with NPD to kind of catch on to the tools that people use to manipulate other people. And it's not just people with NPD, it's just anybody with any dark energy at all. Like, this book really does outline things pretty damn good to show how people manipulate other people. Like I said, I'm sorry that you're dealing with this, and I'm sorry that this is bothering you so damn much. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, but I mean, it might if I had NPD. You're like tunnel visioning on this, and getting so damn bent out of shape. Like, once again, the term narcissist comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus. It's not something new. It's not something that people stole from, um, NPD. I mean, let's see here.
Fall into it at all, because you are not a professional, you are not trained. The DSM is a guideline that professionals use. It's not something that they just read through and check things off and diagnose people. That's not how it works. The DSM is just a framework, a diagnostic framework for them to base their impressions off of. So, can we please just stop with
Okay, so ancient Greek mythology versus how long has psychology been around? The scientific study of psychology has been around for 100 to 150 years. So, I mean, what are you getting at here? We're not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is bothering you so damn much. Like, and yeah, those of us who have dealt with, extreme, and I mean extreme abuse from people who may or may not be NPD but have narcissistic traits. There's a difference. There's a difference. Okay. Um, I mean, you're squirming so damn much trying to, justify your position. Like, I mean, uh, one has to wonder: are you just doing this because you're mad that people are catching on to these games that you people try to play with your? I mean, not saying you specifically, but like what the hell, dude? Like. Spend some time, understanding your terms before you come out here saying that people are diagnosing. Because the scientific study of psychology, which would be in the parent category in enabling somebody to give the diagnosis of NPD, has not been around nearly as long as the term narcissist. There's a reason why there's that old Greek mythology story. It's older, and it details people that go around with this entitled situation that you have, not us. You're trying to tell us that we have the problem by trying to armchair diagnose people. That's not what we're doing. Look the damn term up. I mean, I mean, I don't think it's that hard, is it?
The armchair diagnosing. It is not helping anybody. It is not central to your healing. I don't
It's
know
not what
why
it's
people
about.
think that it's so central to their healing that they
It's
know
not
what
what
their
it's
abuser
about.
was diagnosed with. There are so many resources for abuse victims out there, so fucking many. And you can
Look
also
up what the
suspect that
terms
your
mean and
abuser
where they
has
came
something
from.
and look into that on your own
Simple
without
as that.
announcing to the general population, my abuser's a fucking narcissist. Like, oh my gosh.
Look up
And
where the
what
terms
gets me
come
is that
from.
people get so offended and so butthurt when I tell them that they're not qualified to diagnose anybody, and that screams
We're not.
entitlement. And I just find it a bit ironic when somebody's going around calling somebody else a narcissist, and then they think that they're entitled to diagnose another person when they're not a doctor.
So I know if you actually watch this, like you're not going to see where it's you who's making the mistake here, and being the entitled one. Like you are being completely hypocritical by saying that it's us on the outside who are trying to point the finger and this and that and the other thing. Look where the damn terms come from. Anyway, I think I've said enough. No offense to you personally, lady. Like, I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. I really am. Like, I wish I could make this so that it's not bothering you so much. To go out and make a video about it, basically being like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that things have gotten to you that bad. Like, but you know, you're trying to take a 19th century um, scientific field of study and retroactively change that because words have certain meanings. Nobody's diagnosing anybody. Words have meanings for a reason.